A concept that's somewhat similar to exception handling is called catch-throw. Catch-throw is used to break out of deeply nested loops and is not used all that often in Ruby programming, and some Ruby programmers would look down on you using it, saying that you're using faulty logic if you can't come up with a better way than to use a catch-throw. But to be complete, I want to demonstrate how the catch-throw works. And this will be a fairly short lesson. So we're going to call this program catch.rb. The problem that catch-throw solves is when you have nested loops and you want to break out of both loops at the same time. So let me come up with a very simple example. So I'm just creating a list of numbers. And that should be 1 through 10 except for 2. There we go. Not that we're going to use them in any particular way. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable that's equal to the length of the list minus 1. And then we're going to say while passNum is greater than 0. Then we're going to have a second loop that will take us through each subscript of the list starting at 0. And then we're simply going to print that value. Now what we want to do is we want to stop. We'll say if I is greater than 6. We want to stop. We want to break. So we enter a break. Now, watch what happens when we run this program. It didn't really stop, and so it goes through several different iterations of the data. Because if you go back and look at the code, the break only is associated with the for loop right there. And that's all you can do with a break. You can't break out of both loops. So one solution to that is something called a catch-throw. Let me show you the throw part first. For throw, you simply throw a symbol or a label, also what those look like. Kind of like in exception handling when you raise an exception. Now this throw has to have some place to catch what it throws. So up above the loop, we put a catch, which controls the whole program. So to fix this, I have to indent everything else inside that. So give me a second while I do that. And then we need to add one more end to end the catch. Now, what should happen is when our subscript gets to 6 on the first time through the list, our program should stop. We'll leave this data on the screen to compare it with what we get now. So let's run it, and so you see what happens. Now, admittedly, this is not a very useful program, but it does demonstrate how catch-throw works. It's very hard to come up with a good example of using it, and so I have to kind of have a made-up example. But understand that when you need to break out of a nested loop and break all the way out to the top, in other words, out to here, when you're inside this loop, break right here will not work because break will only break you out of the for loop, and then you'll just simply go to the next iteration of the while loop. But using a catch-throw, once we want to break out of the loops, both of them, then we throw to a place that's above the outer loop, and that causes the program to stop. So that wraps up this lesson on catch-throw, and we're ready to move on to the exercise for this chapter on exception handling.